This is the iPhone 6s, a phone released in 2015, which makes it an 8-year-old phone. This phone, how does it feel in 2023? How does it run on its software? Because to be honest with you, this software still feels really up to date in 2023. Now, I daily drive the iPhone 12 Pro because I think it's a great screen size and it's a great phone in 2023. And when I compare the software between the iPhone 6s and my iPhone 12 Pro, what shocks me is how well this keeps up to date for an 8-year-old phone, because I know it's not on the latest software at the moment. However, it is still on a software which looks and feels very similar to the iPhone 12 Pro. It can update all the way to iOS 15.7.3, so it has lots of software updates and it still feels just like iOS 16. Obviously there's a few minor tweaks, but it's not vastly different. As for design, the last silver iPhone or iPad I had was the iPad 5th generation, but when I upgraded to the iPad 9th generation and with my computer, I moved to the darker grey design because I preferred it. However, you can see the design similarities. It still has the Apple logo, it still says iPad, or in this case iPhone, and it has the rounded edges. Now obviously with the iPhone 12 and newer, Apple moved away from the rounded edge design. However, it still feels really nice in your hand, and there's something great about a phone that curves to your hand. It doesn't jar into the sides of your hand like my iPhone 12 Pro sometimes does. It's much smoother and definitely a really nice phone to hold. The thing that lets this device down the most is the battery life and the display. The display is a 4.7-inch display. It's really small for 2023 standards, and the battery life yet again is just really poor in day-to-day life. It barely gets you through a day from my personal experience. I am sure for some really light users this would be okay, but for most people I don't think the battery holds up that well in 2023. As for the camera, here I have the iPhone 6s in the camera application. I've got a plant here, so I'm going to go up to it. I'm going to tap to focus. Now obviously you're seeing this through a camera, but actually it's okay. The detail definitely isn't there when you zoom in compared to other devices, but it's alright. It's an overall image when you zoom out. It still looks fairly decent. If I got an 8-year-old Samsung phone, perhaps it would be similar, but the software support definitely wouldn't be there, and that is something that Apple are very good with. I did take a photo with the selfie camera, and you can see, obviously I wasn't holding it completely still, but you can just see the quality really lacks there, especially compared to newer phones. Although I still don't think the iPhone selfie camera for the iPhone 12 models, at least because that's what I have, is that great. Compared to some Samsung phones I've used, I don't think the selfie camera is anywhere near as good as the rear camera on these phones. When I made a video on the iPhone 5s, which I have with me, and I also made a video on the iPhone 4, which hasn't yet been published, what struck me about those is you could see the huge improvements Apple have made to this day. For example, on the iPhone 4, the software just feels really lacking, out of date, as you would expect for a phone of that age. But when I use the iPhone 6s, the software still feels like it integrates really well into 2023. It even has the focus modes which we see in iOS 16. So the thing about the iPhone 6s is the software. Furthermore, the design has changed vastly from the iPhone 4 onwards. For example, the iPhone 4 has the boxy side designs just like the iPhone 12 models do today, and the iPhone 5s and the iPhone SE first generation continued with that. So when you use the iPhone 6s, you can see a noticeable change in the design of the phone from some of the older models like the iPhone SE and 5s. Apple still have not yet moved away from these ports, so we still have a lightning port. The great thing is that the headphone jack there too, but the design is very similar. We have the power button on the right hand side of the phone, just as with the iPhones today. We've got the SIM ejection side here, but I think that swaps sides on the newer models. I'm trying to look at my phone as we speak. And then on the left hand side we still have that nice switch, which is a great Apple feature, and the 2 volume buttons. Obviously a big change, as we've mentioned already, is the camera. There's one camera, there's not a massive setup on the back, and there's one flash, and obviously there's a little microphone there, and it's a 12 megapixel camera. Despite the fact that it's a 12 megapixel camera, even on my iPhone that we're recording on, the iPhone 12 Pro, it has a 12 megapixel camera too. So the megapixels in this instance don't mean much, but the software processing and the way the camera is used is very different in 2023. Despite the age of this phone, what I want to congratulate Apple on is the software. I cannot get over how good Apple are with integrating software and making it feel up to date. Having focus modes, for example, that feels like something that is a really new thing that only recently got released, yet this phone still has that. So I am very impressed with that part of this phone, and even when I use it today, it still feels smooth. When I'm opening and closing apps, there is not a huge amount of delay like you would find with some 8-year-old phones. So I am very impressed with how this holds up. Definitely not the best buy of 2023, but still a really good phone, especially as a backup or for perhaps a younger child. Very good phone. Now, I'm hoping there aren't going to be many people considering purchasing this iPhone in 2023 because don't buy it, it's not going to be worth it when it's 8 years old. However, if you still use this phone in 2023, how is it? Because I am actually fairly impressed. It runs smooth. The Touch ID is something I've forgotten to mention, but is definitely something lots of people love. I love my Face ID. I've got used to it now, but I know there are lots of people who still prefer Touch ID over the Face ID, and it is a very effective method of unlocking your phone. It's secure, easy to use, and lots of people still prefer it. So whilst I don't recommend you purchase this phone in 2023, for those of you that use it, I wonder if you're thinking to yourself now, how long will this last? I know lots of people are slowly upgrading from the iPhone 6s and the 7 models, which were very popular at the time, but I do think it is starting to show its age in terms of the camera and the battery. The camera is very limiting. These days we have a 2x zoom on most phones, and some even have a 0.5 lens. This is very limiting and not good quality at all. Software obviously is very good, but the battery life also lacks, and in 2023 that is very important to many people as we are increasingly using our phones more and more to watch videos like mine, scroll through TikTok, follow people on Instagram, and so much more. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. This was a brief video about the iPhone 6s, and I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've had a look into what the iPhone 6s is like in 2023. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you around.